Alright guys, let's do a little practice with Figma. I actually gave you guys some files you can work from. The files for a Figma file is a .fig. Oops. There it is, .fig. So if you want to import them, what you can do is you should have them in the files for today. And we're going to bring them into Figma. The way you do that is in this menu here, you can go to where it says Import File. And then basically just find the file. So I'm going to look for Figma. I'm just going to import all of them at once. Give them a second to upload. Okay, let's hit done. Let's start with exercise 7, just to kind of show you the difference between raster and vector. I have two canvases here. This sort of kind of very curvy wolf or fox drawing. One is made with pixels, the one on the left, and one is made with vectors, the one on the right. What I'm going to do is select the raster example, and I'm just going to make it larger. Okay, so you can see what happens when you take a raster image and you blow it up. It becomes very distorted, right? You can start seeing the sort of stair-steppiness here. It becomes very blurry. I'm going to take the vector example here, and I'm going to blow it up. And you can see, compare and contrast, that the vector stays, excuse me, stays nice and clear. Okay, so this is, if you're blowing up a graphic for a website or any sort of project, you might want something like this to be your graphic. So and that's one of the benefits of working with vectors. I talked about making shapes here before. You can make a rectangle or an arrow. If you make an arrow, you can choose the arrow type from the stroke panel. This is the arrow color, is really the stroke. Circle, polygon. If you click, I'm making a three-sided shape. Up here, this is actually where it says count. This would be the number of sides to your shape. So you make different side shapes. If I have 4, that's a diamond or a square. 5 is a pentagon. 6 is a hexagon. So on and so on. One thing I didn't mention before, I talked about solid colors, is you can also have a gradient, which is a blend between 2 or more colors. So if you want to have a gradient, when you click on the fill, you're going to get a little color swatch here. Up where it says solid at the top, these are various gradients. This is a linear gradient, meaning it goes in a line. Now you notice that right now it's going from gray to gray and it's kind of fading out. These are what are called color stops, and so what I'm going to actually do is click on them. And then when you click, that's where you can set the colors. You can see I change this from gray to red, or maybe I'm going to change this to yellow. I'm going to click on the other one, and I'm going to set that one to maybe purple. It's not coming through all the way because the opacity defaultly sets really low. It sets to 0 for some reason, so I'm just going to change that to 100. And now you can see that I'm getting a blend between yellow and purple for my shape. If you want to change the direction, change this line. So it was going from top down, now it's going from left to right. And it's just blending. You can even add colors to this gradient too. So if you actually click above it, see how I added a color? So you can add a color, switch it to whatever color you'd like. Okay. And then if you don't like a color, you can always remove it too by just clicking and pulling, sorry, I was hitting delete. There you go. And that removes it. If you want to go back to a solid color, you can always do solid. A radial is kind of similar, except instead of going from left to right, it goes in to out. So it starts from the center and it sort of blends in all directions. There's an angular, which means it kind of goes clockwise. And there's a diamond, which is kind of similar to the radial, except it forms more of a diamond shape rather than a circular shape. I'm actually just going to go back to solid, but those are always options for you if you want. All right, so you can make all sorts of shapes here. If I make a star, if you want to change the number of sides to the star, that's here. So right now it says count 5. That means it has 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I was to change that to 7, I got 7 points now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the angle that they're going at. This angle, a higher value would make the star kind of fatter. A lower angle amount would make it much more of a pointy star. Let's talk about quickly aligning things. And a lot of times in design, we want to lay out objects really quickly and align them. So for instance, I have 3 circles here, 1, 2, 3, and maybe I want to all align them to one side. Now I could try doing this by hand, or there's even little things like kind of guides and rulers, but there's even an easier way to do it, which is I'm going to select all 3 of these just by holding down the Shift key on my keyboard to highlight 1, 2, 3. You also could do this from the layers as well. And I'm just going to go over to the top of my design palette, and I'm going to go to where it says align left. And what that's going to do is it's going to take all the currently highlighted objects and align them to the left side of the leftmost object, which in this case is going to be there. So if I click on this, you can see it aligns it to the left. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to click it where it says align right. Similar idea, except it aligns it to the right side of the rightmost object. If I do it to the center, it's going to find the centermost point of all 3 objects. So that's aligning horizontally. Horizontally. We can also do it vertically. So I have 1, 2, 3 squares here. I can align everything to the top, which is the topmost side, bottom, which is the bottommost side, or I can kind of average them together. You can also do what's called distribute. So a lot of times, if we're having multiple objects, we want them to be equidistant from each other. So I can highlight these and go here. Distributing them vertically means there's going to, these have different amounts of space, but if I do this, now they're going to have equal amounts of space. So that's distributing horizontally. You can also distribute vertically too. So right now there's different amounts of space between my items. If I click here, distribute vertical spacing, makes it more even. Oops, we already talked about fills, so I'm not going to go through this again. But we talked about how you can have a solid fill, you can have a gradient. Sorry, I'm repeating this. I forgot what my own exercise had in it. This would be like a linear gradient. You can even have a pattern or an image. What this means is that it'll take any image you upload and it will tile it. So I don't have an image. I forgot to give you one. Actually, well, I mean, this isn't great, but let's use one of these stock images. There you go. So it fills it with the image. Now, if what we could do, I'm going to go back, and fill means it's going to take the image and it's going to fill it. We could also tile it, which means if the image was really small, I deliberately made the image a little smaller. See how it tiles it over and over? So if you want to have an image that tiles, like more like a pattern, this is not a great example, but if I had more of like a pattern, you could do something like that. You can even rotate it if you want. Okay. I'm going to go back to files. So when we start getting a lot of shapes or items in Figma, each item you make is independent of each other. So it's like this, these are independent shapes. Every time I draw something, each vector is independent from each other. That can sometimes be kind of a hassle. So what we're going to do is we can actually group things together. So what I'm going to do is simply highlight multiple shapes. I'm holding down the Shift key. Another way you could do this is by literally just kind of dragging, and selecting everything. And what I could do is I could make this into a group. The way I could do that is by going to the Figma menu. I could go to Object, Group Selection, or Command or Control G. That puts everything into a little group here in my layers. You can give the group a name if you want. I'll call it Blue Circles. I can now basically affect this group as a whole, so you can see I can turn off the layer as a group, I can lock it as a group, I can move this as a group, I can scale it as a group. So that's kind of the benefit here. It also kind of cleans up your layers a little bit, so you don't have a million, layers going on. I'm just going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to highlight everything here, get multiple, and let's go to same thing, Object, Group Selection, Command G. I'm going to call this Green Triangles. And let's do the final one. I'm just going to use the Shift key to highlight everything here. And Command or Control G. And I'm going to call this Red Squares. All right. That's how you group things. Now let's say I wanted to ungroup something. Let's say I wanted to grab or take one of these triangles out of my triangle group. I can click and drag it out of the group, and that just makes it independent. So now if I affect that group, I don't affect that one layer. If you want to ungroup a group as a whole, simply go to Object, Ungroup, or Shift Command G. And now they go back to being individual shapes here. Okay, this is exercise 12. So this is kind of going back to what I was talking about with editing the anchors of a piece. So I have, the square here. I'm just going to select it. And if you double click 1, 2, I'm now in editing mode. These become the anchors. If you pull on an anchor, you can edit it. You can also actually add anchors too. If you put in editing mode, you put your cursor along a segment, you'll notice that a little white circle appears. That's the anchor. I'm going to click. And that adds an anchor that I can manipulate. So you can see I can use this to, build some quick, easy shapes. If you want to remove an anchor, basically highlight it. You can highlight it, it turns blue, and hit the delete or the backspace key on your keyboard. Oops. Sorry, I take that back. Shift back? Yeah, sorry. It's shift back, delete or backspace, not just delete. So if I highlight this, shift plus delete, there you go. That deletes it for you. If something has a curve, like I said, if you highlight it, it will have these Bezier handles that you can manipulate. These are manipulating the curve. And when you're done manipulating, you can go to done, and that finishes editing your piece. Last major thing we can do in Figma with vectors is we can actually combine and subtract vectors from each other to once again make more complex vector shapes. So this is exercise 13. Here I have two shapes. I have a star and I have a square here. I'm going to highlight both. And I'm going to go up here to the top right. This thing kind of looks like two squares overlapping each other. I'm going to go to where it says union, and what that's going to do is actually combine these two shapes into one shape. Oops. Let me try that again. There we go. Makes one shape. Okay. The reason why you might want to do this is so that you can have a more complex shape, so that I can do things like if I was to edit this. Well, actually, we're going to finalize this. So technically, I can still edit these independently, but I actually want this to be one solid shape. So I'm actually going to highlight this and go to where it says flatten. This is going to make it one solid shape. So this allows me to make a much more complex shape than what I had before. Here I have 1, 2, 3 circles overlapping each other. I'm just going to highlight all three by clicking and dragging. Oops. Go up to union. Okay, this makes it one solid shape. By the way, if you're wondering which color is kept, basically the shape that is on top, that is the one that'll keep its color. Okay, you see, whenever you combine shapes, you can only have one fill, regardless of whether it's a solid color or a gradient or an image or anything. So I'm going to go here, union. I'm also just going to go to flatten. And once again, that allows me to have, more complex shapes. Or build more complex shapes, relatively easily. Same thing here. I have like a yellow circle and a blue star. I'm going to highlight both. Union and flatten selection. Okay. We can also subtract. So what that means is right now I have a circle and a keyhole shape, this red one. I want to subtract this from the other one. What I want to do is kind of like cut it out of the middle. The way I like to think of it is like if you rolled out dough and then you like use a cookie cutter to cut through something. That's basically what we're trying to do here. So I want to cut this out of here and make like a hole, like a donut hole. This keyhole is positioned above this. I'm going to highlight both, and I'm going to go to where it says subtract selection. That subtracts. And I'm going to go to flatten. And then once again, I can edit this if I want. And this is a hole that actually goes through. You can tell this because if you put it above other items here, you can see through it. You can use subtraction to make some quick shapes. So here it's like, I have a blue circle and a red circle that are overlapping each other. If I highlight both, and I'm going to go to subtract selection, it's going to subtract the one on top from the one below. It's going to make that this nice, quick crescent moon type shape. Okay. One last thing I'll show you is what's called intersect. Intersect is if you have two shapes, I have a red shape and a yellow shape here. I'll overlap the two, and I'm going to go to where it says intersect. What that's going to do is it's only going to keep the area where the two shapes overlap, which is right there. So I'm going to go to intersect, and there you go, keeps that. Here I have the star shape and the circle. They're overlapping each other. If I highlight both and do an intersect, it keeps the part where the two overlap, which is this little shape right there. Okay. All right, so that's a lot of different ways to create and edit vectors, shapes. There's more, but I don't want to, this is just sort of a basic intro to working with vectors. Let's talk really quickly about adding text. So let's say you wanted to add text. Let's say you were making a logo and you wanted to say the name of something. You can grab this text tool and just click. And you can see I get a blinking cursor right there. So Joe student. If I highlight this text, you'll notice you get a little text tab over here in design. I can change the typeface right here. A lot of these are sort of built-in fonts that are what are called web fonts. You can try different ones out, see which one you like the best. That one's kind of more of a script type font. This one's a little bit more of a sort of ink brush style. That's why I like this one. That's the typeface, or the stylistic way that the letters are done. You can also apply things like, italic and bold here. I'm going to change the size if I wanted to make it bigger. If you want to change the color, you can do that under fill. So if I wanted to make this red. Okay. So I can add text as well. Finally, so the default file format of Figma is the .fig file, right? But when we work with, and .fig is what we call a vector file format. This is kind of like how the PSD and PhotoP is a raster file format. We can work with vectors for web design, but we can only there's only one vector format that's currently accepted. And that's what's called a .svg, or a scalable vector graphic. So let's say, I'm just going to build a new composition real quick. So I'm going to build a frame. I'm going to make that frame 300 by 300. And let's make a shape. I'm going to combine all of these. Here's my shape. And I'll add some text. Okay, let's say I'm done and I want to download this. What I would do is select the frame itself. Okay, not any one object, but the actual frame. That's going to select everything inside of it. And I'm going to go down to the lower right-hand portion of the Design tab where it says Export. I'm going to click on the plus sign here. This is the magnification. So right now my document is 300 by 300. So 1x means if I downloaded this, it would be dimensions of 300 by 300. If I made this 2x, it would take this and times it by 2. So it would be 600 by 600, so on and so on. I'm just going to keep it at its default size, which is 300 by 300. The most important part here is the format. So you'll notice that it actually has a couple of the PNG and the JPEG would actually convert this to a raster format, kind of like what we did in PhotoP. I don't want to do that. I want to keep it as an SV, or I want to export it as an SVG. So I'm going to select SVG, and I'm going to go to where it says Export Frame 1. And you can see it downloaded that. Excuse me. Let's say, there's my file. Let's say it's a logo, so I might say logo.svg, and then there's my file. So This is the basics of how to use Figma as a vector editing program. You can still save this as a SV. If you want to save this as a Fig file, you can. But to bring it into a website, you're eventually going to have to export it as a either a raster file like PNG or JPEG, or keep it as a vector format. So it maintains those vector properties like smaller file size and the ability to be enlarged, and keep it as an SVG or scalable vector graphic.